Time now to talk a little bit of NCAA football before we get to our Hawk Talk segment. And yeah, a few more ranked teams lost. Not necessarily a crazy weekend like we've seen earlier this season, but huge game. Michigan against Michigan State. The Wolverines were up 14 points in this one. The Spartans came back. Running back Kenneth Walker III rushed for almost 200 yards and 5 touchdowns. He put his name in the Heisman conversation. The Spartans with the mild upset there, given that game was at home. Takes a bit of luster off the Michigan-Ohio State game that's coming up later on this season. But nonetheless, that was probably the most entertaining game of the weekend, especially watching Michigan blow that 14-point lead. Another week and another coach gets fired. Gary Patterson, after over 20 years at Texas Christian University, winds up getting fired. The school did ask him to stay until the end of the season. He declined, so there's going to be a lot of emotion around that game as they host 14th ranked Baylor. Baylor favored by 6 on the road in that game. And you wonder if TCU's got, emotionally how they're going to be impacted, if they want to pay tribute to their old coach, if they're emotionally down. But that's a tough matchup coming after what's an emotional situation for them. And the college football playoffs, their first rankings. Now, look, every week we've got national rankings. The Associated Press, Moj, and other publications put out their rankings. But the official CFP rankings, the first one is coming out tonight. It'll probably be out by the time we get posted. I got my own selections. I know you got yours. I'm going to start right here. I've got Georgia, unbeaten, dominant in the SEC at the top. I've got Cincinnati. I know you don't like this one, but they've earned it based on what they've done to this point over a long period of time. They're sitting at number 2 undefeated. Oklahoma also 9-0. They're sitting at 3rd. And Michigan State, after that big win, I've got them at 4th. The next 2 teams in, 1 loss Alabama and 1 loss Oregon. I don't have Ohio State, and I will not put them ahead of Oregon as long as both those teams have the same number of losses, because Oregon, of course, beat Ohio State. So those are my top 4 and the next 2 in. Who do you got?
Okay. First off, I'll agree with you with Georgia. I mean, what they did with Herschel Walker and Buck Bellew, using your reason and your logic, that should count for what they're doing now.
Same players, a couple of years. It does matter.
Okay, so moving along, Georgia's, okay, we'll give them Cincinnati. How can you rank a team that's 8-0 against teams with a combined record of 27 wins and 29 losses?
A team that was this close to beating Georgia last year.
You're not even in the conversation.
They're there. They're going to be there.
Number 2, I'm going to go with Alabama, because guess what? Right now, to me, they are the second best team in the country. 5 Power 5 wins against teams with non-losing records. So to put in Alabama to number 3, I'll go with Michigan State. Yes, I'll go with Sparty. I know the blemishes are Indiana and Nebraska, but again, 3 wins on the road versus Power 5 teams. I like them. And then Oklahoma, 7 wins versus Power 5 teams. So we'll take Oklahoma at 4. Don't talk to me about Cincinnati. This is BYU all over again.
It's not. You saw what they were right there. They almost beat Georgia last year in the bowl game. They were that close to beating Georgia in the bowl game last year. If it wasn't for a final second play for Georgia, Cincinnati is right there. They've beaten everybody at the front of their schedule. If a group of 5 team has a window to the playoff, this is the team that should have that opportunity. Few games to watch this weekend. Probably the biggest one in terms of 2 ranked teams. You've got number 12 Auburn at number 13 Texas A&M. A&M, of course, the team that beat Alabama earlier this year. That was kind of the high point of their season. A&M is favored by 4.5 at home. Over/under on this game is 50. Both teams sitting at 6-2. Big game in the SEC West.
Yeah, you know what? I look at this one, and I'll take Texas A&M. I always love the home team in college football, just given the amount of emotion you get. So I'll take A&M minus 4.5. So I look at that one. Alabama, though, minus 28.5. How can you give up 28.5 points in a football game? That always scares me.
And I know
with the Oregon and Washington too.
Listen, you can give up 28.5, but usually when that happens, Alabama, they're playing like Arkansas State or somebody, right? You don't have this against LSU. That's the bizarre part about seeing that point spread. This is a big-time rivalry in the SEC. These are generally 2 of the top teams in college football. LSU had a big stumble last year after winning the national title 2 years ago. Their coach, Ed Orgeron, is out at the end of this season. Boy, they're showing nothing to me. They had that game against Florida where they look good. Can they cover? They can cover. There's no chance of an upset here, but they can cover. 66 total number of points in this game. They could go over because Alabama, their defense, I thought they looked so good early on in the season. The last 3 or 4 games, their defense has looked, I don't want to say pedestrian, but they haven't looked like an Alabama defense. So this game could hit the over, but Alabama's going to win big one way or the other. Rivalry game here. You've got number 7 Oregon favored by 6.5 on the road at Washington. These two teams didn't play last year because of COVID. This is a huge rivalry in the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to be at the game, Moj. Yeah, that's my place drop since you're in Toronto. And I can't take the Huskies. I can't, as much as it pains me to say this, because Dylan Morris is not good enough at quarterback. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is going to have a lot of success against that offensive line. Washington's turned the corner the last 2 games, but their quarterback play is not good enough. Even though they just beat Stanford, who beat Oregon, I don't think it's going to happen for the Huskies. I do think Washington covers, though, and I hate to say it, I think Oregon wins. Please don't record this. Delete this segment. I don't want any of my Washington fan friends knowing that I actually picked against the Huskies against Oregon.
Hey, you know what? Old rule in betting, man. Always take the dog at home. I'll take the Huskies. I'll take the points. And who knows? They might wind up even winning this game. Why? Because you talked about it. It's a rivalry game. There's a lot of emotion in these games. If they get a couple of breaks and feel good about themselves early, maybe, just maybe, the Huskies can provide the upset.
What was fun fodder is that Jimmy Lake, the head coach of Washington, who's really talked a big game this year, and it hasn't necessarily gone the way he wanted. He actually was asked about losing recruiting battles to Oregon, because Oregon has out-recruited Washington under Mario Cristobal, the Ducks head coach. And he basically said, yeah, we don't really recruit against Oregon. We recruit against academic powerhouses, schools like Stanford and Notre Dame and some of these, to which the president of Oregon fired back, talked about how much respect he's got for the school, the president, and their former coach, Chris Peterson. So Jimmy Lake kind of stepped in it. I'm not sure that necessarily helped him. But hey, all part of the fun of college football.